Hey guys, so video today on guilt and how people use guilt without us maybe being aware, and how we then take that on to blame ourselves and feel bad about ourselves. So on this topic of enmeshment, we talked about where your boundaries aren't clear with a parent, and you feel like they're sort of coming in a bit too much into your world and you struggle with boundaries. One of the main tactics with enmeshment is guilt, and you'll be made to feel guilty because you, in a way, won't be pleasing that parent or supporting that parent in a certain way. So common ones might be something along the lines of, not being able to, phone them so often or be in touch so often, these sort of things. Or that you can't, say, make like a special day like Christmas or Easter or one of these sort of days. Guilt will then be used to sort of make that in terms of, oh, well, you're not coming to see your family, and then you'll start to feel bad, and then you will then probably make a decision to maybe go to that event or to phone that person every week out of guilt. And that is not the way. The way we want to get to is to the point where you have boundaries, right? So the boundaries have never really been clear with, say, you and the parent, and you've never said, right, this is what the boundary is. That I will let you know if I can make this event. Speaking from the truth, so you should really feel that inside yourself. There should be an instinctual reaction that you want to give, but then you fall into this people pleasing mode again, and you think, oh, well, I'll do that just because of that. Especially when there's a lot of fear there, and you fear that even if you said no, that the person's going to angrily react or make you feel even more guilty. So this feeling of guilt is not a good emotion to feel. So guilt and shame are the two sort of strong emotions which are used to sort of, I don't want to say the word manipulate, but they make people feel, quite trapped, and then the sort of fear then controls them. So shame, something's wrong with you, then you feel really down, you feel quite stuck, right? Guilt is something where you feel like, oh, I feel really bad if I don't do this. But because we don't really know what's going on, we've not really clearly defined these boundaries, that can be used to take advantage of us, and people can easily use it to feel guilty. Now, this is a big thing that's happening to us all the time, where in our heads we're sort of blaming ourselves for making the wrong decision, this or that. And then if you notice, maybe that parent or person will say to you, they'll make you feel bad for making a mistake, or that you miss something and say, oh, well, you're not reliable. It's kind of making you feel like you're a child and you can't really, because that's kind of how the dynamic's been, and it's never really changed. You've never really sort of separated into your individual self. But yeah, the guilt will be used to make you feel like that, and then become dependent on that person, and that person's right, and you kind of become absorbed into their world. Maybe it's a parent or it's someone around you. That's their guilt. That's what's going on in their heads all the time. They're probably being hard on themselves, and you have to be like, no, I'm not going to take that on. And you're doing yourself a favor, for not only for you but that person as well, that parent, because you not only become stronger, but they do as well. So if you imagine there's a firm boundary there, they will then start to be probably less hard on themselves. And you've been chosen to lead by example. Look at it from that way, from a spiritual point of view, you could say, that it's up to you to lead by example and say, no to the guilt, and to call it out as well. Maybe not necessarily saying you're making me feel guilty, but be aware that there's sort of guilt tactics being used. And the other thing to mention, that it has to come from a place of love. You want to say, for example, call someone when you want to, when it's from, like, you want to call someone because you feel it inside yourself from your heart that you want to call this person. But the parent or someone else or friend or whoever it is might just feel a bit too clingy. But when there's a lot of neediness there, like, I need you to phone me, a few times a week or whatever, then it never actually comes from a place of love. It's always a place of fear, and that other person needs to let go, essentially, because they'll be suffering from holding on to that. And also, yeah, that you want to have strong boundaries. This thing with the people pleaser is putting other people before you. So you know, and it's a false relationship because you're never actually saying what you really think, and they're taking advantage of you. And you know, people need to be called out on that because sometimes they're just not aware they're doing it. And you don't have to say, you just have to be firm and be confident being firm. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, if there is feeling firm and you're getting a bit of reaction, that's normally a good sign. But they should feel the guilt. You know, after a phone call, do you feel a bit deflated with a certain person, with a parent? And then be like, is this person making me feel guilty? And as I've said various times, this will be playing out on various relationships. So you might not be aware of it with a parent. You know, we talk about the example of the guy with their mother. Guys with relationships with other women, this will be playing out massively in your life, and you'll probably see it all the time. And then sometimes you're reacting, or then you're feeling guilty, and that person, it might not even be to do with that person. It might just be what's going on in your own mind because you're projecting that out. So that's good to be aware of with guilt. You know, if you are feeling guilty, remember it's a sign that you want to get rid of the guilt. It's not normal to always feel guilty, and people will use it to feel guilty, and it'll trick you, and it's very it's very clever, like it's heavily, you know, like easily disguised, and then you'll sort of then start to feel really bad about yourself, and you don't know. So obviously therapy, working with people on this is probably the biggest thing to do because a lot of the time you just won't be able to see it. But if you're watching the call, if people are making you feel guilty, be aware of that, and you know, set that boundary. And if people don't respect boundaries, they need to be pretty much cut out of your life. Obviously, a parent's a different situation. I think they will eventually respect you. But with certain people, you want to, you know, if they just don't respect you or your boundaries, then you don't want them in your life, right? You know, I see that these people are here to teach us a lesson. You know, if you say like a narcissistic person comes to an empathic people pleaser, you know, it's the people pleaser needs to stand up to them. You know, for you to learn a lesson, because other people pleasers won't be coming to you and testing your boundaries. They'll just be, you'll both be enmeshing with each other. So it's a bit of a weird relationship, but essentially you want to try to meet more individuated people. And as you come more out of this journey as well, you'll notice that other people maybe are in this enmeshing, people pleasing, and it'll feel really weird. And then you'll think like, oh, I can't believe I used to act like that. But you would also have compassion as well. But the big thing to take away with guilt is it's going on in our head. You know, every time we make a decision, we're scared to fail. We don't want to disappoint someone. You know, that's going on in our minds as well. So we can change that. You know, and we can change that by being firm. So I hope you enjoyed this video, guys, on guilt. It's something I hate to see. I've realized it in myself and with other people recently, but I keep catching myself away of you know, when I am feeling guilty and how there's something I can do to change that. And that's not normal, essentially. It's used to sort of keep someone in fear and under control and, you know, enmeshing into their world. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you soon.